Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Cripped Podcast. Today, we are joined by Desiree Hoffart, who is a local personal trainer right here in Cranbrook. She comes on to tell her courageous story of a near life-altering motorcycle accident that left her in many months of recovery. Fortunately, she was able to make a full recovery, but now has a unique perspective that she now translates into her personal coaching business. Without further ado, let's get to it.
Welcome to the Cripped Podcast, where we explore serious and often life-altering injuries, long-term recoveries, and the inspirational people who refuse to give up. Starring Cranbrook local, your host, Darcy Allen.
Desiree, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So just to start things off, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
So as you said, I am a personal trainer here in Cranbrook, BC. It's always kind of a long-term goal of mine to get into that industry. And 2 years ago now, I was able to make it a full-time career. So that has been amazing. I love what I do. I love the work that I do. And honestly, it was a lot of my own injuries that kind of steered me to the fitness space.
So speaking of your own injuries, so I understand you had a very serious, it was a motorcycle accident, was it not?
Yeah.
So why don't you kind of just go over, the events that happened that day?
Yeah, so I think that was in 2016. It's been so long ago now, I don't even remember. It was 2016 or 2017. The best part about it, I had just quit my job.
Oh, good.
At that time, I was full-time at an actual motorcycle store. Just wasn't what I love to do. And I quit my job, and a couple of my friends said, hey, let's go on a motorcycle trip. So we were headed to Nelson, BC from Cranbrook. Anybody that's driven that road from around here, it's quite windy.
It can be very windy, yes.
It's a popular route for bikers because it's beautiful.
Yes.
For one, you get to drive right along the lake, but it is quite windy. And unfortunately, we hit a storm kind of just outside Caslow after we got off the ferry. It was just torrential downpour.
Not ideal for motorcycles?
No, not really. So we did stop. Actually, we stopped at a gas station and kind of were like, well, maybe we can wait for it to blow over. It did pass over, but of course, the road's wet by that
slick,
point.
Yeah.
So we continue on our way, and there was 2 sport bikes in front of me and my other friend. We both had sport bikes. They had super fast ones. Ours were fast, but not quite as, let's say, against the law as theirs were. So they took off.
Street legal.
Yeah. They took off ahead of us at speeds we don't need to talk about. Me and my other friend were kind of in the middle, and then there was 2 people kind of behind us, bringing up the rear. They were just casually riding. We were going a little bit faster, but we came around a corner, and there was a wooden bridge, which I don't know why you see those anymore or why it hasn't been replaced by now. And because it had rained, that bridge was quite slippery. My bike, because it was just kind of like a basic starter bike, didn't have traction control on it, so came ripping around the corner, hit that bridge, back tire kind of slid out, and I actually saved the wipeout on the bridge by correcting. However, in my overcorrection of the bike, I wasn't quite leaned enough to make the corner.
Right.
So I came close to the ditch, not quite the ditch. I came kind of sideline, but then I caught some loose gravel and it shot me into the ditch and kind of Supermaned off the bike after that. I don't even know what speed I was going at once I crashed. It was, I don't know if you've ever had a catastrophic injury, but everything just kind of goes blank and
Yeah.
like time stands still. Like if you've ever heard somebody talk about like everything is just moving slowly,
Right.
like I'm sure everything's happening at hyper speed, but you feel like you're just like slow-mo moving through the air. Like I swear to God, I was in the air off the bike for at least 5 minutes before I hit the ground. But I know that's not true.
That's like when I did my injury, I waited over an hour for an ambulance, and that to me felt like an absolute eternity. Now, I didn't see myself slow motion falling off the back of a truck and dislocating my knee or anything like that, but you're right, time does kind of stand still, but so when the injury happened though, um, were you conscious throughout the whole thing? Were you knocked unconscious?
Yeah, shockingly enough, even though my head was the first thing to hit the ground, I had this huge spider crack in my helmet. Kids, wear your helmets. Probably saved me there, but I was conscious the whole time, kind of just laying in the ditch. And because my friend was right behind me on the bike, he saw the whole thing and was right there. And I knew, like, laying there that something was wrong just because of my anatomy background.
Right.
I'm like, I can feel my legs, like I can move, everything moves. I'm not passed out, like head doesn't even hurt. I didn't even have a concussion. That was shocking.
I would imagine at this time too, adrenaline is probably pumping pretty high in your body.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I could feel like every time I took a deep breath in, it hurt,
Right.
like kind of through my upper back. But I wasn't even really bleeding that much. I had scraped a lot of the skin off my one arm.
Mhm.
There's this kind of weird scar that you can see there under my tattoo. But yeah, this whole arm, I had ripped all the skin off. But aside from that, like I wasn't bleeding or anything like that. So I knew something was wrong. And that's why, I didn't get up right away and be like, oh, dust it off. I'm fine. Kind of just laid there. And the also terrible part about where I crashed was in a no service zone.
Yeah, that's could be a problem in that area.
And if I believed in God, by chance, a park ranger had driven by, like, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes after I had crashed.
Right.
And he had a satellite phone and was able to call an ambulance. But, again, this is kind of crashing between two towns, and the nearest ambulance was probably about an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
So I was laying in that ditch for quite a long time.
Yeah, and like I said, I can relate to that feeling all too well. Something's wrong. You need to go to the hospital, and it's like eternity. You're waiting for help, and it's like, is it going to come? I mean, eventually it does, but that could be a tough feeling, knowing that you're in a lot of pain and knowing that you have to wait for help.
Well, and honestly, at that point, I wasn't in a lot of pain. Like you said, the adrenaline was probably flowing. The most painful part was once they actually picked me up, they had me to take me first to a nearby clinic just to make sure I wasn't internally bleeding or there wasn't something like seriously wrong. Once they had that checked, they had to send me back the opposite way, about another hour and a half, then to get actual x-rays and stuff. Right. So once they ruled out not internally bleeding, nothing major, now you got to go to a bigger hospital that has more of the gadgets that
Right.
they can use. And basically this whole process, once I got to the hospital, I was strapped to the backboard. And it wasn't one of those like nice breakable ones. It was
Right.
flat. Like we're just talking a flat piece of wood. Like might as well have been hard plywood.
So was there a lot of concerns for like your spine at the time then?
Yeah, that was their main concern because that is usually a big one in a motor vehicle accident.
Yeah.
And so they had me strapped to this thing kind of like a mental patient. Like my head was taped down, my arms were taped to my
Yeah.
side, my legs were like I can move. And I don't know if you've ever, went camping and your air mattress deflates
Yeah.
like halfway through the night and you wake up and like your whole back is just, oh man, that's basically how it felt. And this process took about 6.5 hours
Mm-hmm.
until they got the scans done that I was strapped to this thing and just couldn't move. And then of course you're strapped there, you can't move, you're the only thing with you is your thoughts. And then so all of that like starts setting
Yeah.
in, and my friends that were with me just couldn't believe that I hadn't cried yet or hadn't had a freak out, and I'm just kind of sitting there emotionless,
Yeah.
like I don't even like, because everything just starts going through my mind, like, oh my God, I don't have a job, and now like, what if I can't work? Like, oh, like what am I gonna do? So then all of those things start flooding through, which doesn't really help the cause.
No, I can't imagine. And like when you mention being strapped and basically motionless, not allowed to move, I mean, that's almost like a claustrophobic feeling, is it not? Because I know for me, like when I had my knee strapped up, I couldn't bend it at all. It drove me nuts. Because
Hmm.
like, I have like very poppy knees, old man knees, as I like to call them, and every now and then I'll give it a quick snap and a quick pop,
Hmm.
and it's like suddenly I can't. And that's only one limb, and you had your entire body strapped down.
I remember this funny moment in the hospital. Like looking back now, it's funny. There was a sweet old man in the room next to me,
Yeah.
curtains up. And he sees like doctors coming in and out of my room like constantly. So I hear him, like overhear him ask, like, oh, what's going on in that room next to me? And they say, oh, like a young female crashed street bike. And he's like, through the curtain, he's like, oh, honey, I know exactly how you feel. I tipped my bike over in my driveway and busted my ankle. And all I could think was, like, you know how I feel right now, old man. I didn't respond to it, but like I'm just like, oh my God, no, you do not know how I feel. I can assure you.
No, it's it's funny how everybody was like, "Oh, well, I've done this and I've done that," which is totally comparable to the thing that you did that's completely different.
And I think that's a big thing with injuries, like just because it's a knee injury or a back injury, people think they know your pain
Mhm.
if they've had something similar. But there's so many different, like, we all deal with pain differently. Um, B, it's not the same.
No.
Like, it's not exactly the same whatsoever. And I think sometimes that can really cause maybe even a bit of internal conflict, right? Because you have all these people saying like, oh, well, I rehabbed in
Yeah.
3 months, or, I'm still broken, or this, that, and the next thing. And it can be hard,
Yeah.
I think.
Like for myself, I had somebody like I explained what happened. I'm like, "Oh, I dislocated my knee," and this is like before I knew that I'd ruptured pretty much every ligament that's in there. And what they said to me was, it's like, "Oh, it's just I used to dislocate my knees all the time. You just pop them back in." I'm like, "No, I don't think that's how it works."
No, not exactly.
Like, yeah, maybe you've dislocated something and you were able to pop back in, but to compare that to somebody who's obviously in a lot of extreme pain and anguish, to just be like, oh yeah, brush it off, you'll be fine. That kind of like what you were leading on to can really mess mentally with a person,
Hmm.
because it's like, oh well, this person say they had the same thing and they were no problem, and then you start looking at yourself like, okay, well, how come I'm not having no problems? Why is it taking me so long when this person B said it was no big deal?
Yeah. And it's because, I mean, like they say in anything, you can't compare yourself to people.
No.
Like your situation, your injury is not the same as somebody else's. I mean, like I didn't even know the extent of my injury. I thought something was wrong, but here I broke multiple vertebrae in
Yeah.
my back. Also dislocated my shoulder at the same time, but that wasn't, apparently the top priority.
So what was the full extent of your injuries?
Yeah, so it was multiple fractures in my T-spine, so my thoracic, kind of like, think of it like middle of your back, like
Hmm.
right from the shoulder blades kind of down the center of your back. So it was higher up, basically the ones right between my shoulder blade. I believe it was T1 to 3
Okay.
was what I fractured. Some were more severe than others. Like if you've ever seen what kind of like the spine looks like, there's like projections off the side.
Yep.
So some of those were broken. One of the vertebrae, there was actually like a spiral fracture right through it. And then there was the dislocated shoulder, which I didn't realize too much, because I do believe it kind of dislocated and came back in.
Right.
And then I had this pretty bad road rash here, which healed up very well,
Yeah.
considering I have only just that little scar. But that was the extent of the injuries. And it may not seem like much because I didn't like have to get braced up just because of where it's located, but it was a big hit, especially when the doctor came in and said, basically, you can't do anything for the next like 3-ish months
Right.
until like that's properly healed. And that was the first time I cried that whole evening.
Well, I don't know you very well, but what I do know of you is that you're a very active person. You get involved in, I think, pretty much any sport that gets thrown your way.
Yeah.
So I could just imagine for someone like yourself to say, hey, you can't do anything for the next 3 months. Like, how was that to deal with?
Like I couldn't even walk, right? Like it was like it did need to heal. But that was the biggest struggle. And I will 100% admit, like, I was that person for a while that felt really sorry for myself.
Yeah.
Like I would say a solid month, I was the one that sat in bed, watched Netflix, and felt sorry for myself.
Yeah, and that is justifiable to an extent. I mean, I went through the same process myself. It's, healing, recovery, it's not a linear journey. It's a very up and down. And that is both true with the physical aspect as well as the mental aspect of it. I know myself when it first happened, I'm like, oh, yeah, don't feel sorry for me. I'll be fine. I'll be right back up there. I'll be competing again next year. And then I think in a sense, reality starts to set in and it's like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to get 100% better. I'm not going to be able to compete in the same way that I used to. And, those are the ebbs and flows that come with it. And it's, you hit that depression stage, you hit that, enlightenment stage, we'll call it. And it is just the highs and lows of it. And the longer your recovery is, the more that's going to be going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, like I said, it was a struggle for a while. And if I can give advice to people is I always think you should feel the feelings. Because the people that stuff it down, I've also been there. If you like stuff it down and pretend like it doesn't exist, you're like, the no rest days crew.
Yeah.
Dumb. Because injuries do need to heal properly, or you are going to set yourself up poorly for the future. Because it will come back and bite you in the ass.
It will. I spoke this with my last guest as well, who was a physiotherapist. And, if you try to, kind of go off the program in terms of like physiotherapy and recovery, and you try to do more than what your body is currently at that time capable of, you can actually end up doing more damage in the long run. You might feel better in the short term, but if that's going to be causing you a lot of mobility issues and things like that in the future, is it worth being macho?
And that's what I thought to myself because, like, you were right. I am involved in every sport under the planet. I've played everything from, I've been a dancer, I played rugby. I'm pretty tough in that sense, right? Like, I could bust an ankle and still go out there and play.
Yeah.
But this time I sat there and I was like, if I don't let this heal, this could really impact my life and my career.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought to myself, like, I do have to, do this the proper way.
Yeah.
And lucky for me, knowing what I know, I was able to rehab myself through that. But, going back to the whole mindset thing, what I think is really important for people is like when you have these injuries, yes, feel the feelings, don't get stuck there.
Yeah.
Because this is what I see way too many times because I work with so many people now with injuries, is they're still stuck in the same mindset that I'm never going to be able to do X.
Yeah. They start to kind of dive into the victim mentality of it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I see far too often. You, like you said, you work with a lot of people dealing with injuries, and so you probably see a lot more uphand than I do. But far too many people, they have these, life-altering injuries and things like that, and they allow that to just control the entire rest of their lives, never accomplishing anything new because they're in that mindset of like, oh, poor me, woe is me, this is my life. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And I just don't think that's true.
No, there's a whole goddamn sporting event dedicated to people with disabilities,
Yeah.
way more severe than, my dislocated shoulder and your bum knee.
Yeah.
Or your blowing rotator cuff. So, for people to sit there and be like, this somewhat minor injury, when you can, look at something like that, all these Paralympic athletes that compete with one leg, no legs, whatever it is in like a high performance event, your injury doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be okay. Is the journey to recovery going to look the same as everybody else's or as quick as everybody else's? No. But like the way that I kind of like to look at it is, people who kind of just almost give up on life altogether when they have this, life altering injury would be the same as if we were trying to get to a destination and all of a sudden we hit a roadblock and just turned around and went home.
Yeah. Oh, can't go that way anymore. Oh.
No, most of us wouldn't do that. We would take a detour and we'd get there. It might take a little bit longer, but we would still make it.
Yeah.
So
that's
I think you got to look at injuries the same way.
And that's exactly right. I mean, everybody's injury is going to be different. Everybody's road to recovery is going to look different. It's going to take different amounts of time. Like an ACL tear is going to heal a heck of a lot faster than a completely ruptured ligament will. But they can still get to the same destination. It just might take that other person a little bit longer. And that might also mean more adaptability. They might have to learn how to do things in a different way. For example, somebody that comes a paraplegic, obviously they're not going to go run a marathon, but there are adaptive routes that you can take with that, whether it's, I'm sure they have it. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but like a wheelchair marathon or something like that, right? There's always going to be something that they can do that's within their control that they can set goals for.
Totally. You can still make it to the destination. The journey is just going to look different. And it's probably not going to look how you planned it to start, right? I mean, life never goes how we plan it.
No.
We can try.
I mean, if it did,
goes.
I would be on a yacht in the Caribbean with $1 billion in the bank. But unfortunately, life didn't work that way for me.
Wouldn't we all?
So when it came to your recovery, what did that look like? You said like you were at least 3 months, you weren't really able to do anything. Did you work with anybody like a physiotherapist or anything like that? I imagine just quitting your job means you probably didn't have compensation benefits or anything like that.
Yeah. So at the time, like I said, I had just quit my job. I was renting a place at the time. I still had my bills to pay. Luckily, I had some savings. So like that first month, kind of like I said, just sat around, felt depressed, sorry for myself. And then after that first month, it's like, okay, I need to figure some shit out. I can't stay this way, right? And that savings funds are gonna evaporate pretty quickly. Yeah. So at the time, I was already working at Fitness Inc., just part-time. So I did go back to training. And funny enough, something that I love to say, which I got tattooed on my arms, is out of adversity comes opportunity. So obviously, at this point, I still can't move completely properly. Right? Like I can't
Like as of
squat.
today.
Yeah. Even after that month, like I still was, like sitting down, like helping myself to sit down. Like, so I couldn't even demonstrate what I wanted to do for clients, right? So I took it as an opportunity to just become a very strong educator.
Right.
Like, what am I communicating? Is it getting through to people? Because I can't physically show them. So now I have to be really good at communication so they understand this is what we're doing.
In some ways, do you think that now benefits you today as a personal trainer?
100%. Like it made me a better personal trainer, because I couldn't just rely on like, oh yeah, let's do this, how to do this. I had to learn how to be a better like leader.
Yeah.
Per se. So yeah, it helped me down the line. And then back to your like original thing with the recovery. So, after I took that time off, then I had to start really slow. Like I just walked.
Yeah.
When I came there to train people, I would just walk on the treadmill. And then in that period, I also did find another kind of more permanent full-time job that wasn't training. So then I had that income back. And I could sit a lot at that one, more like desk.
Right.
So that was good. But yeah, I started with walking. That's really all I could do. It was so bad that I couldn't even lift an empty shopping basket.
Oh, really?
Like at the time, I literally needed my mom to come help me grocery shop. Like that's sad.
Okay, I know that feeling.
Kind of demoralizing it, right?
I mean, I had to call my mom for probably a lot of things. Be like, I need a load of laundry done. My laundry's 2 floors down the stairs, and you almost feel helpless in many ways because it's like these are basic things and I can't even manage these myself right now.
And the unfortunate part for me, because I feel like I am quite independent, especially at that point, was my mom was happy to help. She loved to help, and it got to the point where I'm like, you need to go. Like, I just need to do it myself.
Yeah, you're being overbearing. I'm an adult.
Yeah. But yeah, it started with walking, and then I had to start really light getting back into weight training, like cables, stuff that was externally stabilized, like machines. And that was really hard for me because I was strong before that. I didn't feel so strong lifting the 2.5 pound weight on a lateral fly.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's very humbling.
I think that's the second part of injuries that people need to understand is A, first, change your mindset. B, drop your ego.
Yeah.
Because too many times I see that as well. It's like, okay, now they start rehabbing, they start getting back into the normal swing of things, and they can't do something to the extent that they were able to before. So it's like, screw it. I'm over it, or everybody's watching me, whatever. So it's like, leave the ego at the door.
Yeah.
You have to. Nobody's watching you. Nobody's paying attention. And guess what? We have to, unfortunately, start back at square one if you want to get to square 18.
I think it comes down to like, you have to understand where your limits currently are, but also have that willingness to push those limits within reason. I mean, I still can't squat worth a damn, and I'm not about to go load up 400 pounds onto a bar and try to squat it. But I can start with body weights, eventually working up to a bar, putting 135 pounds on, slowly working up, understanding my limits, but willing to push them.
Well, exactly. And, even when I started finally getting back into the heavy lifting, because obviously, like, I didn't deadlift, and that's one of my favorite lifts.
Yeah.
Just because of how I'm built. I'm generally pretty good at it. Couldn't really do that. And I spent so many months just doing like focused back work, almost like a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like a full back day, like face pulls, like seated rows, overhand rows, like whatever it was, until I finally got to a point where it's like, okay, things aren't hurting as much anymore. Because that was the other thing, like my back just constantly hurt. Right? And then it finally got to a point where it's like, oh, I can make it through a whole day, like no back pain. Clearly things are stronger. It's like, okay, can we maybe get back into that lift? Now, most people would try to jump right to like barbell.
Right.
I'm like, that's probably not the best approach. Maybe we should start with the trap bar.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a different setup, a little bit safer for your back, still working similar muscles. But it's like, okay, we got to start here first. Get this a little bit, little weight on here, and then maybe we can bring the barbell back.
Yeah. Even resistance bands I've found to be tremendously helpful, like through my recovery, especially, when you're dealing with where you haven't been able to do anything, like you've been inactive for a very long time. Obviously, you're gonna deal with some muscle atrophy, things like that. Although I do firmly believe that earned strength is very hard to lose and will come back very quickly once you get back to work. But, you want to be able to start off slow, like you said, and work your way up from there.
Yeah. And in saying that too is you want to be careful you don't get stuck, with the bands. I see that a lot of the time, right? Like people do physio. And this is where I think there's a bit of a gap in the system,
Mhm.
right? They do the physio, they do the bands. That's all important for the rehab process. But then they get stuck with the bands
Yeah.
and never progress past there.
And it's usually, if you're looking at like a physiotherapist office or clinic, it's usually those like very light, like ribbon bands,
Yeah.
which don't have a lot of resistance to it. I know
No.
myself, like I use like a 40 to 100 pound resistance band. That's a fairly thick one. But those like the little thin yellow, thin green, they don't do a lot. They really don't.
No, everything has its merit and it has its place. But if we want to see progress, we do have to push those boundaries. And I think as a trainer, that is my favorite part of helping people with injuries, is seeing them finally push past that comfort zone
Yeah.
and actually seeing what they're capable of. Because that's all they really need, or all anybody really needs, is that little bit of confidence,
Yeah.
that little bit of like above where they were, and then usually you're off to the races.
And I think a lot of that's fear-based as well. You know,
Oh, totally.
they've had this injury, they know what that feels like, and they've been slowly working using the light resistance band. And I think in the back of their mind, they're scared that they're going to re-injure themselves or injure themselves in a different way. And that comes with the mental battle of the entire thing. But you know, you have to reasonably push yourself.
100%. And sometimes that is where a hired help is really going to benefit you.
Yep.
You know, I know one of my clients should have been a very strong dude, right? Probably about your height, same kind of build. He blew out his knee, similar to what you had done, and, you know, was basically squatting 135, but
Mhm.
box squatting. And I'm like, man, like, and I just harped on him because I played baseball with him. I'm like, just let me help you. Just please let me help you. And, you know, it was a couple months and we had him box squatting 315,
Mhm.
135 to 315. And it was just because it needed to be progressed in a certain manner. And, you know, maybe just needed somebody saying, you can do it. Because that's the other thing, is sometimes it's really hard to be your own cheerleader
Can be, yes.
all the time. And then especially if you don't have people around you that actually understand.
Yeah.
There might think they understand, but don't actually understand what you're going through and how to help you get to your goal.
So obviously you've made a full recovery. You know, it's been a number of years since the accident itself. Do you still have back pain issues or anything related to the accident?
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Like, I have to be doing something either really wrong in my lifting or, you know, the only time that I've felt it in the past couple of years is like a full day of snowmobiling.
Right.
Like out snowmobiling, you're pulling that thing
Yep.
around a
It's kind of
lot.
aggravating things.
A lot with your upper back, and sometimes get a little bit of tension up there, but no, like for the most part, it's very minor.
Yeah. Because I mean, I've seen you do, like I said before, do all sorts of sports. You did strongman competition last year, which is very heavy on the back.
Mhm.
Did you find any issues doing that?
No. And I think it's just because, you know, I took the right amount of time to let it heal properly. I rehabbed it, I strengthened it, and didn't let it hold me back.
Which is kind of the importance of, you know, rehab and, you know, doing physio, whether working with somebody or doing it yourself. And it really goes to show, because had you not done all of that, you know, what do you think the chances are that you would still be dealing with a lot more issues today?
Oh, I'm sure that I'd probably be sitting here like this still. I mean, the whole time that it was like right after the injury, I was like constantly sitting like this, but it was because I couldn't
Right.
like physically straighten up.
Yeah, hard to relax that way. You know, if you can't sit comfortably, stand comfortably, or really just be awake comfortably.
And I really do think like why I'm at where I am now is because I focused on strength.
Yeah.
Like that was the goal, is I need to strengthen my body, strengthen the muscles surrounding said injury to get me to where I want to be.
Were you doing a lot of strength training before the accident?
Yes and no. Not to the extent that I do now. Because actually at that time of my life too, I was actually modeling, like high fashion
okay.
modeling. So my weight training and my fueling my body weren't the best.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I guess extensive strength training is probably not super common in the modeling world.
No, not really. It looked a lot different. But I did have that base from years before, playing sports. I started lifting when I was 15. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had that kind of built up like over the years, like, because you've been, I'm assuming, doing sports since you were a kid.
Yeah, 4 years old.
So, I mean, you've had that kind of work, because I will always 100% advocate for strength training just in general for everybody. Looking at my injury, for example, I fell 3.5, 4 feet off the back of a truck, unloading a 300-ish pound root table. Basically a coffee table made out of a tree trunk root, very heavy, very awkward. And like I missed the step off the extendable ramp off the back of the delivery truck, which is where I fell. But a lot of that weight landed on my knee, obviously. I mean, the whole thing was dislocated like completely. You could not dislocate a knee any more than I did. Where was I going with this? Oh, And, at the time, I was a strongman athlete, so I was doing a lot of strength training, very heavy squats, very heavy deadlifts, very heavy overhead presses. And I truly believe that had it not been for the strength training I did, that injury, all of that weight coming down onto my knee to where it was able to completely dislocate it, rupture all the ligaments, well, 3 out of 4 anyways, and fractured my femur as well. I wholeheartedly believe that I would have probably shattered my leg or something worse, potentially would have lost my leg had it not been for that strength training. Because I'm sure, as you know, strength training is going to increase your bone density. It's going to increase the lean muscle tissue around the bones and the ligaments and everything like that. To where when you have these unforeseen accidents, you're going to be better off versus no strength training.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I even have a great case to highlight that. A client that just started with me, she's 86. She's been coming to the gym for a long time. You'd know her if you come in the mornings. And she's been working out pretty much her entire life too. In kind of like early summer, late spring, she broke her hip. At 86, that would have ended most people.
Would have, yeah.
But because she had been strength training for so long, her ortho said that her recovery was equivalent to that of a 25-year-old.
Oh, really?
And now she's back in the gym with me, starting that rehab process, after physio.
And how long ago was that?
That she broke her hip? I think it was like late spring. I want to say like April or May.
Oh, okay.
In there. So she was about 3 months off as well, like completely couldn't do anything. And now she's getting back into the gym. And it's just, I mean, it's inspiring for one, but it also just,
86.
it goes to show, like, I know plenty of people in their 80s and 90s who break a hip and it's like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like kind of end of quality of life.
So you've obviously worked with quite a number of people who have gone through injuries and things like that. What is probably the most common thing that you see in those types of people?
Just a lack of belief that, because a lot of them may have tried stuff before too, or, like they just didn't buy into the process. And again, I think this is what helped me be the trainer I am today with that injury, is being able to explain things just better, right? So like I tell these people, like, I'll get them to actually give me their like MRI, their X-ray reports. And there's a bunch of medical jargon on there that nobody understands unless you've read a medical textbook or taken an anatomy course. But, I can understand it. They got the procedure done. They don't know what the heck it means. and, where they should go from there. So then I can go through it and be like, okay, like, this is your problem. I can explain it in simple terms and then be like, this is why you can't raise your arm overhead, but this is what we're going to do to be able to get you to a point where you can raise your arm overhead.
Right.
And then getting that buy-in where they actually understand, like, oh, okay, now I actually fully understand my injury, and now I can see the goal
Right.
in the future. Like, that's the difference.
Giving not just the dream of the destination, but the entire roadmap to get there.
100%. Because if they don't even understand what's going on, like, then that goal seems so much further away.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if we're just saying, like, you blew up your knee, now I want to squat 600 pounds. Well, that looks really far away when you're not even squatting, right? So it's like, understand and then have that roadmap.
It's like they need somebody to explain to them that, okay, you are going to go through some hard and difficult times right now, but you will get there. If you just give them the dream of like, hey, this is where you can get, but don't explain that it is going to be difficult. There is going to be hardships that they need to be able to get through, and that it's going to be a whole bunch of little, small, tiny steps that's going to get them to that destination.
Oh, yeah. And I've actually been real with people, and I say, like, I don't know if you will ever get to this exact place that you want to. Are we going to try to get you damn close or to there? Absolutely. But I'm also not going to, give you false hope that it'll look exactly what you have pictured in your mind.
Yeah, you don't want to just BS them. You can't.
No.
You can't tell a paraplegic that absolutely you'll be walking next year, because that's going to put false hope into them. And some miracles do happen, and I've seen it. But to give that false hope, that's just going to lead to, I would say, like a mental health crisis down the road when they finally realize that it's not possible to get here.
Yeah. And how I kind of like combat that is like, yeah, okay, fine. We have that end goal, but we focus on the interim goals along the way. So it's like, okay, well, we want to get you here first.
Yeah.
We accomplished that. Okay, cool. Now we're moving to here. And then that just makes that end goal look more achievable.
Yeah. Focus on the micros, which will get you to the macros.
100%.
So if you were to come across somebody who just had an injury, a life-altering injury that's going to leave them physically disabled for the rest of their lives, how would you approach that person, and what is the best advice that you would give to that person?
So I already said it throughout this podcast, but it's not your injury holding you back. Change your mindset and drop your ego. I honestly think it's as simple as that. You need to change your mindset first. That's ultimately what is going to get you off the couch and stop feeling sorry for yourself and on the right path. And then drop the ego. Your journey's not going to look how you envisioned it, but it's going to look a little bit different, and that's fine. Be okay with it.
Awesome. I don't think I could say that really any better myself. Desiree, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on this episode today. Thank you so much for your insights through your personal experience, and honestly, just the perspective that you have as a personal trainer now as well, and how that kind of all works together. But before we finish off, I'll leave the floor to you if there's anything else that you would like to say, and then we'll wrap this up.
I think what I just said was a good closing, but, just don't let your injuries hold you back. Your past's going to look a little bit different, but keep going.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.